The Duval Rundown, driven by Jacksonville Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram Westside, home of the lifetime warranty.
Good morning. We've got a game to break down finally. Welcome to Duval Rundown. Please be joined as always with Ryan O'Halloran, sports columnist of the Florida Times-Union. I'm Hays Carlyon. Trent Osborne helping us out today on Duval Rundown. Thank you, Trent. Ryan, coming out of the bye, we've broken down all the struggles, over the last couple of weeks during the bye week. Now let's look forward, because this is, to me, this is about as close to a must-win as a 4-3 team could have going into Week 9. A Las Vegas team that also is coming off a bye, that's really struggled under first-year coach Pete Carroll. How do you assess the Raiders? And in your mind, how pivotal is this game for the Jaguars?
Yeah, I'll start with the second part first, Hayes. It's pivotal. It's a must-win. It could dictate the approach that James Gladstone and Tony Baselli take ahead of the trade deadline. If this team goes to Vegas and stubs its toe again and drops to 4-4 with a 3-game losing streak, I do not become a buyer. In fact, I would explore selling. If they win and come back 5-3, then I'd say, okay, this team has earned the right to add some depth. You have all those day 3 draft picks, but that's the crazy thing about going into the bye with a 2-game losing streak is the natural knee-jerk reaction is to emphasize everything that's going wrong, and there is a lot. But the Jaguars have to go in this game feeling confident that they have the better roster, they have the better defense, they have the more efficient quarterback who isn't throwing interceptions like Geno Smith. This Raider team, also coming off a bye, is right there for the taking for the Jaguars if they play their game and if they show up.
Yeah, without a doubt. And the thing to me that stands out as to why this game is so important, and you did a great job talking about the trade ramifications of, are you a buyer, are you a seller? And I think it's a great point. The other thing, too, is we talk about the schedule eases up. Well, part of that is this game. Mm-hmm. So if you don't win this game, now you've lost 3 in a row. You're going to Houston, who seems to have found some sort of offensive synergy. Stroud coming off a 318-yard performance and a win over San Francisco. We know the defense is among the best in the NFL. So you'd be going into Houston with a 3-game losing streak, could easily become a 4-game losing streak. And then you're back home to play the Chargers, who are starting to get healthier and could even have maybe Omari and Hampton back by that game. And so now you're talking about the potential of a 5-game losing streak. Not saying the Jaguars couldn't beat the Texans on the road or obviously beat the Chargers in Jacksonville, but you need to get this one to feel good about things. And then, if you just split with the Texans and Chargers, you're in really good shape. Let's talk about the Raiders. Brock Bowers is obviously a game wrecker, had an unbelievable rookie year. Let's start with Bowers. It seems like he's going to be available for the Raiders, and he really hasn't been healthy all year. If you're Anthony Campanile, how do you go about trying to cover Brock Bowers?
Yeah, Bowers hasn't played since September 28th, and he's not only their best player on offense, he's their best player by a wide margin. 112 catches last year, a remarkable total for a rookie tight end. And if you're the Jaguars, it's one of the few times with a tight end you consider a bracket, you consider a high-low, you consider a straight double team. The way the Raiders move him around the field, you consider Jordan Lewis, the nickel covering the tight end. If he's lined up in the slot, usually that'd be a linebacker. If you don't have Devin Lloyd, I think that's your best option, is to use a defensive back on Bowers instead of Ventrell Miller. So that's the key. Geno Smith has 25 interceptions in the last 24 games. He leads the league with 10 this year. He's given the ball away. His yards per attempt are the lowest since he was a young player with the Jets. This offense right now under Chip Kelly is not doing anything. And if you draft a running back in the first round, you're banking on, okay, get a lead and lean on Genty. Well, you can't get a lead. They had 3 first downs in their last game. They had 30 plays in their last game. So this offense for the Raiders is totally out of sorts. And Pete Carroll even said during the bye, thought they'd be further along.
Yeah, and you did a great job showing me the other day in the Jaguars media area the historic data from that. What was it, 31-0 that they lost to the
Yeah,
Chiefs?
and it's like Andy Reid could have won that game 70-0, but old coaches respect old coaches.
What it was something like, what was it, like a franchise low in first downs and I mean, it was unbelievable how bad the game was for the Raiders offensively.
So I'll just give you a couple. Tied for fewest first downs, 3. Fewest plays, 30 by 4. Fourth fewest yards, 95. Tied for 6th fewest rushes, 11. And then second fewest time of possession since at least 84. I mean, the Raiders are probably saying, hey, there's nowhere to go but up. We're on our home field. We're facing a team that's in similar struggling straits. But I just, if you don't let Max Crosby ruin the game, I'm picking the Jaguars.
Yeah, and I think the Jaguars will win the game as well. But yeah, I mean, it's Max Crosby. Let's talk about him. I mean, obviously he's one of the best in the NFL. He doesn't have a lot of help. But boy, that motor never shuts off. And, it'll be interesting to see how the Raiders deploy him and also how the Jaguar tackles fare because, it's been kind of I'd say, rough start for Walker Little and, kind of up and down for Anton Harrison.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Anton was having a good season until the last 2 games. He had those 2 penalties against Seattle where he was lined up off the line of scrimmage and then struggled against the Rams. You mentioned Crosby. He plays 88% of the snaps this year. That's a high total for a defensive end. That shows you what you're to say. There is no shut off on that motor. But he's got 4 sacks in 7 games. Teams are probably chipping him. They're probably doubling him. They're probably rolling away from him. And so I think that's going to be the key for Liam Coen and his offensive staff for this game plan is, okay, the chips really haven't had an impact. Okay, so you do throw an extra tight end there, use 6-man protection, see if you can, get the ball downfield a little bit because that's the thing. There's just not a lot of chances. And the other thing that's going to be key for this Jaguar offense, you mentioned it to Liam Coen, who went on a great tangent is a negative word, but it was a positive tangent. He basically said, got to do better, got to call more of them. I think they're telegraphing their screens a little too much, which is probably what they worked on during this extra practice. So that's the best way to combat an edge rusher is throw a screen. Then he'll start saying, well, maybe I should hold back a step. Well, then that gives Lawrence more time to throw it down the field. So I think this could be, sort of an emphasis is get those push button plays where the quarterback gets the ball out of his hands.
Yeah, it's a great point. And, the other thing too is just run right at Max Crosby. Do you think the ground game will kind of revitalize itself against Las Vegas?
Well, I think it needs to. And, one thing that Liam Coen has pointed the thumb at himself about is he feels that he's gotten away from the run. And, right after, hey, we were in X and O mode on Monday. The 2 old guys in the blue shirts in the front row of the press conference. And one thing I asked him, I said, hey, one thing Nick Saban says on game day is you got to be stubborn calling the run. Because the run game is 2, 3, -1, 12, 20. That's, so you got to stick with it. And he goes, I got to call more runs. And so I think that discipline will help it doesn't seem like they have a lot of trust in Tootin and Allen after they, talked them up during the preseason and traded Bigsby. So this has to be a Travis Etienne second half of the season contract drive for Travis. So I would expect that. And also, I would, try to get into Lawrence's head and say, hey, use your athleticism. You're not going to run power sweeps with number 16, but if nothing's there, just, take the short profit and use your athleticism to gain some yards that way to keep, stay on schedule because they haven't been able to do that.
They haven't. And he's got pretty good straight line speed. He's not overly shifty. To your point, he's not overly powerful. But Trevor Lawrence just, going in a straight line for his size, gets going pretty quick and can certainly, pick up some yards. And I would emphasize to Trevor, if I was Liam Coen, look, when you step up like that, we're not asking you to keep your eyes downfield and throw it because I don't trust him to do it. I don't think he sees the field well enough to do that. Some quarterbacks can, and they can step up and take that final peek up before they break the line of scrimmage to see if there's a guy. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is there yet, which is fine. Maybe he gets there next year. with an offseason to work with Liam Coen, he gets more comfortable. But I would say if I was, Liam Coen, I would say to Trevor, look, when you just take it, just be decisive. If you're decisive with how you move and your speed, you will get the minimum of 4 yards to keep us in a good down and distance. And many times he's going to get 7 yards. He might get 9 yards. He might get 12 yards. So that would be my thing is once you decide to go. Like don't even peek downfield because, frankly, this is a quarterback that doesn't know when he's beyond the line of scrimmage.
He's had 2 of those this year. And I'll add to that by saying usually when you step up in the pocket, you've probably gone 1 to 2 to 3. Okay, by that point, even the best protection is going to be wheezing a little bit. When you step up, don't even, like you're saying, hey, just get what you can get. And you know how to protect yourself. And so there's a lot of things on this offense they have to improve. They still are trying to figure out how to work without Brenton Strange, who's out with the hip problem. But the other thing I liked have been in that Jaguars offensive think tank this week was who can they trust at receiver? Parker Washington has some drops. De'Ami Brown is sort of a go ball guy. Tim Patrick's a nice player. Give him a couple catches, but I've run out of ideas for Brian Thomas Jr. They have no choice but to express confidence in him. But to me, I would throw it to him early in this game on the scripted plays and say, show that you're worthy of playing 85% of the snaps.
I think that's a great idea. I think honestly it should be something that's in the opening script every game because you got to see what kind of level of care that he's brought to work that day. And I want to know that right out of the gate. If he's going to give me one of these shrink my, head into my shoulders, one arm kind of, if that's the effort, I want to know that immediately so that I cannot play him, and so I agree. I'd send Brian Thomas Jr. over the middle early and often and see who came to work. And if he passes the test, then he should be the focal point of the passing game. But I'm with you. I'd ready to see Travis Hunter, consistently get double-digit targets. And De'Ami Brown is, he's a guy. Parker Washington's been a bright spot, but certainly not a game wrecker at this level in terms of receiver. He's done some great things as a punt returner, but I think it is going to be interesting to see the rhythm that the passing game can get into. Again, it's all predicated on them being able to run the ball against the Raiders. Beyond Crosby, who defensively do you think, if anybody, the Jaguars need to be really worried about, in tune with, in terms of that Vegas defense? And then we're going to flip it around, talk to our, get our sponsor mentioned, and we'll look at the Jaguar defense in this game.
Jamal Adams, I guess.
It seems like it's Max Crosby and
you look at this defense on their depth chart right now. They only have 2 guys on the first line who are their own draft picks. Talk about a team that just is constantly spinning their wheels. Tyree Wilson has shown some flashes as an edge guy. He's a first-round pick. But you look at their corners. They list, Eric Stokes. He's a veteran. Kelly. Kai Blue Kelly. He's a street free agent. Their nickel Darnay Holmes is a street free agent. Atlanta Roberts at linebacker, I guess. Devin White at middle linebacker. Whatever. So there should be opportunities for this Jaguar offense to dictate the terms of the game and make it 2nd and 4. String together some first downs, avoid getting a 3rd down where they're terrible. Before you go to break here, my last point on Thomas is one thing that Liam Coen said last week was, well, we got to make sure he's, what he's comfortable doing. To me, I'd say I don't care. You have to play the width of the field. And if that means, running a crosser, so be it. Maybe you sit him over the middle, have him run a sit route, have him run a deep post. you need to make sure that teams can't go into the game playing inside leverage because they know he's not going to go inside.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if he wants to be a number 2, then maybe that, but if you want to be a number 1 guy who one day is going to be making $35 million a year, you got to do it all. And, we're not seeing even a semblance of that so far, but he's had a bye week. We'll see if that helped him reset. I mean, we know he has the talent. It's been disappointing, the results so far. Trent Osborne helping us out today. Jacob Simons has got the day off. And so, Trent, please, let's say hello to our sponsor, and thank you so much for your help.
I'm Rick Ballou, Jacksonville Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram Westside, proud partner of the Jaguars. Drive with confidence. Every new vehicle comes with our exclusive lifetime warranty. 7030 Commonwealth Avenue or online at jackswest.com.
So, Ryan, let's flip it over to the defensive side. You did a great column. Again, you can read Ryan's work at jacksonville.com. A great column on Josh Hines-Allen. Take us through sort of the coaching staff's view of Hines-Allen's first 7 games. Obviously not a lot of sacks. He's got a half a sack. Over 250 players in the league have at least one. So stunningly poor production in that regard for Josh Hines-Allen, but he's done some good things. He sealed the win over the Texans by hitting Stroud's arm, and Antonio Johnson got the pick. So there have been some good moments. He's gotten pressures. But what were your conversations like with the staff about getting Josh Hines-Allen going in the second half?
Yeah, and they met about that. And a guy of his caliber should be getting a sack or 2 by mistake with coverage or whatever. They had him drop a lot in the zone coverage on early in the season. They've cut back on that. I like that. He should be moving forward. He's still a good pass rusher. And let's go a couple things. One is, Trayvon Walker getting the club off his right wrist after surgery. That should help. He'd be a more effective player. Against the Rams, they lined Hines-Allen up at defensive tackle a couple times. Armstead was the end on one play. Trayvon Walker was the end on another play. See if you can probe for matchups there. But really, Liam Coen brought up a couple scenarios. Do you overload blitz on his side? Do you rush a safety and a linebacker right on his hips? See if you can get a one-on-one. Do you do it on the other side where he's guaranteed a one-on-one for his side of the field? And so those are just 2 things. And also the third thing is, do you run some games? They haven't done a ton of that, at least what I've seen on tape. And so maybe you try and get him looped around, see if you can get a free rusher. They did it on the first play of the Ram game, and he got a hit. So they are looking at all possibilities because they are last in the league right now in sacks at 8. That's pathetic. And so they need to get Allen going. They need to get Walker going. They need to get more out of Bagba. Maybe they got to play the rookies more. Then interior defensive tackle, they're not really getting a lot of pass rush pressure there either. So it's a full line that needs to improve.
You mentioned Liam Coen's Monday press conference where he was so insightful on several different topics. And one of those topics was the defensive tackle production. I mean, the body language was, it's terrible. And
he used the think tank word.
Yeah. I mean, what did you make of Liam's response to the question about the defensive tackle production? Because it almost seemed like he's at the point where he's even given up a little bit on the position coach. It was like, we had a think tank as a staff. The way is the running backs coach trying to figure out why the defensive tackles aren't playing well. Just seems like one of those things. And again, I appreciate Liam's candor, but really it seemed like the head coach was pulling at the last possible straw to try and figure out why they can't get the defensive tackle room playing at a higher level.
Yeah, and we were talking about Armstead, talking about Hamilton, you're talking about Mason Smith. Duan Smoot's some good things. He has some versatility. I think the think tank was like, the defensive staff, but his body language was they're not playing well enough. It helps not on the way. So they got to because it's tough to get edge rushers at the deadline. It's really tough to get functional interior defensive linemen at the deadline. So they got to make do with the guys they have. You mentioned a possibility when we're in the media room on Monday. How about Kalen Saunders? He's been a healthy scratch this week too since Smith got out of the doghouse. Maybe give him a shot, see if he can bring some burst. Yeah, I mean, funny thing is they're 6th against the run, but they're just not doing anything as pass rushers. So how can you sort of marry that production a little bit? So that's going to be key, because teams are going to say, hey, if you guys are good against the run, we're just going to drop back and throw it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if the quarterback knows that he's not going to feel any sort of threat from the inside, it gives that quarterback a great comfort zone. And so they've got to figure it out. Let's talk about, as we wrap here, let's talk about another position of concern. And could it be, if the Jaguars lose this game, I think, Geno Smith, to your point, has been careless with the football, but he has seen it all in this league. He's in his mid-30s. Now he didn't play for several years, but he's been in the league that whole time. Very cerebral player. And at his best is the guy that's capable of putting up a 22 of 26, for 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, and he's beating you. How do you think Geno Smith will look to attack these safeties, and how important is this game for that group?
Well, it is important, and if I'm the Raiders and Chip Kelly, I look at 42, and I look at either 29, who did not practice Monday, Eric Murray, or whoever replaces them, and say, okay, we're going to test those 2 guys. So I would work the middle of the field with Bowers. Wingard has had problems the last couple of games against tight ends. 61-yard pass against Seattle, the 31-yard touchdown against the Rams. So I don't think, I assume they keep rolling him out there. I'm not sure if they have confidence in any other options, but yeah, that's what I would do. And the other thing is, and I'm going to write about this later this week, it's time to start playing Greg Newsome. I mean, you traded a starter for him. I get the first game, you just getting him, just got into town, played a little bit more against the Rams, but he did a group interview after practice on Monday. Guys work in the locker room, talking to players. It was good to catch up with a bunch of those guys. But with Newsome, he said, hey, going from man to zone is an adjustment. And he said, hey, I've used the last 2 weeks to really, hone in on the system. I expect him to play full duty against the Raiders. And if he doesn't, then, I'll say, okay, what's wrong?
Great stuff. Ryan, what's coming up on Jacksonville.com?
I got a column for tomorrow on Jaguars defensive coordinator Anthony Campanile. Met with him after practice on Monday. He's a big boxing guy. He uses clips about technique. So we talked about some of his favorite fighters, talked to a couple of players about how that breaks up the monotony. I mentioned Newsome have something later in the week. And then then Saturday, Florida, Georgia downtown, your Gators.
Yeah.
With an interim coach, only a 6.5-point dog against the Dogs.
Easiest money to be made this weekend. I mean, easiest money to be made this weekend.
Add a 1 in front of that spread, right?
Absolutely. I wouldn't take Florida if you gave me 14.5. I'm shocked it's a single-digit line. Shocked, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll certainly look forward to that. All your columns coming up, and certainly your Florida Georgia coverage as well. That's going to do it. Ryan will be back next Wednesday as we break down the Raiders game, and a huge opportunity for Liam Coen to get some momentum back going on the road and beating a struggling Raiders team. So we'll see if the Jaguars can do it. I'll be back on Friday with Rick Ballou. Until then, thanks for watching Duval Rundown.